Hello, I'm Tim O'Brien, and this is number 0866 of the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0866. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, you'll meet Jocelyn King, who is the founder of Smarter Online Safety. She encourages cybersecurity and online safety because she was an early victim of it.
I was targeted by cyber criminals almost a decade ago. They not only hacked my network, but they were able to bypass my home security system. They broke into our home without leaving a trace and planted surveillance in our bedroom. They hacked into our passwords and were able to siphon off all of our account information. This was a 2-year ordeal. We ended up losing $500,000. My 20-year marriage imploded over it.
Dwayne Brenna is the author of a murder mystery that takes place in 1883 in Saskatchewan. It's called The Laundryman. Where did the title come from?
I came up with the title sort of in the middle of writing the book, but what they're there to solve initially is the murder of a laundryman who has been shot dead in his own backyard in this town of Prince Albert. The whole business of washing one's dirty linens is a recurring theme in the novel, and in fact, Belvedere talks later about having to wash the dirty linens in this town. So the idea of a laundryman seemed to fit as a title, both for the initial scene of the novel, but also for the work that goes on later on.
Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, is back with a weird story for March. This one has to do with magician Chung Ling Soo, whose claim to fame was bullet catching.
So something went wrong with one of these rifles on this night. I think one of the screws, maybe had fallen loose. So he had basically a literal loose screw, and the bullet fired. And so it struck Chung Ling Soo, and he fell to the ground. And at first, the audience, was kind of shocked, but there was this thought of like, oh, this is part of the act, right? As if he's acting like he was hit, but he'll get right back up. But then he didn't. And suddenly everyone kind of realized that something had gone horribly wrong.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, Dad Joke Theater, Sir Dudley's Poetry Corner, Morning Shower Thoughts, and of course, an Idiot of the Day. The guest later, the person who told you this was show number 0866, was Tim O'Brien, Emeritus Ambassador of Odd at Ripley's Believe It or Not, and also the author of Tim O'Brien's Roadside Picks and Picks, The Huge, The High, The Half-Buried. He was recently on show number 0861, so you can go back and listen to him on that particular show. Thank you very much, Tim, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. And before we get to the show, I should mention the fact that last week we had a brand new station airing the program. WFNU 94.1 FM, Frogtown Radio in St. Paul, Minnesota. They play the show Wednesdays at 9 p.m. And if you're listening to WFNU right now, then you already know the time. It's a little after 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. Thanks for listening to the show, and let's get right to the stuff. A Thai man was arrested on March 17th after climbing into the enclosure of Mu Dang, the internet-famous pygmy hippo at Khao Keo Open Zoo. According to the zoo's director, the man entered while the keeper was away and no visitors were present. Security footage shows the suspect approach Mu Dang and his mother, Jana, while recording with a tablet. He remained inside for several minutes before staff discovered him. The man did not attempt to flee when police arrived. He faces trespassing charges initially, though zoo officials plan pursuing additional legal action. The suspect has been released on bail but remains unidentified. Both hippos appear slightly startled but unharmed, with no touching attempted. A veterinarian will monitor them closely. Mu Dang became a global sensation in 2024 through viral social media posts. Okay, I've seen the video. So, this moron decided to climb a fence with his tablet to get a closer shot of this famous pygmy hippo. The fence he hopped wasn't that far away. And you know, most photographic devices, including tablets, have something on it. Oh, what's that technical term? Oh yeah, a zoom! Plus, he was going up to the hippo close to his mother. Do you know how dangerous this is? She could have been protective, she could have been violent, or she could have just been hungry.
How's about dessert?
Hungry hippo! Hungry hippo!
Prathap Munyandi from Malaysia earned Guinness World Records recognition for having 42 teeth in his mouth, exceeding the typical 32 teeth by 10. Munyandi first noticed his unusual dental situation during a 2021 family gathering when relatives helped count 38 teeth. Dental x-rays revealed 4 additional teeth still developing beneath his gums. By early 2023, all 42 teeth had emerged, said Munyandi. Fortunately, most of the teeth grew straight and without any complications. The extra teeth cause no problems and remain largely unnoticed until he mentions them. He said people are usually very surprised and initially find it hard to believe. During his record verification, dentists discovered 2 more teeth yet to emerge. Munyandi holds the male record, while India's Kalpani Balan holds the female record with 38 teeth. You know, to me, the irony is he has 42 teeth in Malaysia, a country without one single nuclear reactor. Because right now, a nuclear reactor is my only explanation.
Greetings, passengers, to another Stuff File program installment of Idiots in Flight. This is the pre-boarding announcement. We are now inviting those passengers who are complete half-wits to begin boarding at this time. Thank you.
We often feature this segment on the show, but this time around there is a twist. It's not a passenger, but the flight crew. And this took place in a plane, but on the ground. A deaf passenger was removed from a Frontier Airlines flight after crew members said she wasn't listening to flight attendant instructions, despite having a disability accommodation noted on her ticket. The incident, captured on a viral TikTok video, shows the visibly emotional woman saying, "I didn't do anything wrong," while gathering up her belongings. A gate agent defended the passenger and explained her deafness was documented in her reservation, but flight crew still required her removal. Gate agents later apologized and helped rebook her flight. Frontier's policy allows deaf passengers to request assistance and establishes communication methods with crew members once aboard. Federal law under the Air Carrier Access Act prohibits airline discrimination against passengers with disabilities and requires accessible communication. Oh, somebody's having their wings clipped.
Attention to the flight crew who sullied our working reputation. You are morons, and you will no longer be invited to our secret airport Christmas party. And even though your idiocy was technically on the ground, thank you for being Stuff File idiots in flight.
And let's get to our first guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? In this day and age, it's important to ward against any cyber threats that may come your way. Jocelyn King is the founder of Smart Online Safety, and she joins us from Southern California via riverside.com. Hi, Jocelyn.
Hi there. So great to be with you.
Great to have you on the program with us. First of all, let me go back a little bit. You are the founder of Smarter Online Safety. So what was the push that came to shove where you decided that this had to be done and I had to do it?
Well, there's a story here. I will tell you, I did not go into cybersecurity willingly. I was targeted by cyber criminals almost a decade ago. And they not only hacked my network, but they were able to bypass my home security system. And they broke into our home without leaving a trace and planted surveillance in our bedroom. They hacked into our passwords and were able to siphon off all of our account information. And this was a 2-year ordeal. We ended up losing $500,000. My 20-year marriage imploded over it, and I almost lost my job. I was working at Intel at the time, and it wasn't because I worked at Intel that this happened to me. But I could barely, when you're going through something like this, you can barely keep your head above water. And it was devastating. I was depressed. I was not sleeping. I was not safe in my own home. And I didn't know what I could do on my phone or my laptop that people could do. And I thought, I work in Silicon Valley in tech. I'm not a hacker, but I work in tech. So I thought that I'd be safer than most. And I was just as vulnerable as everybody else. Cutting forward, what happened was I was looking for that checklist. I was going, there's got to be a way out of this and a way to prevent it. And I have dozens of books and hundreds of websites. And by the way, the FBI, I contacted law enforcement. I did not hit the $1 million threshold or cross state lines for the FBI to be able to help me because they're overwhelmed. They had almost 1 million people file cybercrime reports that year. So I got no help. And the local police couldn't help me because there wasn't a physical break-in because they had hacked our security system and just turned off our alarms, turned off our cameras, and opened the deadbolts to our house like a family member. So I could get no help from the law enforcement and other resources that I thought could help me. And I said, I got to figure this out and create this checklist for myself and everyone I care about. And that spawned this. And it was horrible experience, but I have to say, I went from being a cybercrime victim to being named a top 10 woman in cybersecurity and on a mission where I've been able to help so far over 10 million people learn how to stay safe and sane online in these crazy times.
They always say that looking at something in the future is ideal kind of situation. So going back to your situation, what was it that made you a target in the first place? And what have you changed to avoid being a target in the future?
Great questions. Frankly, like I said, it wasn't because I worked at Intel or something. I wasn't the person who had the secret keys or something. I was just available. And here's the thing. I had, a secure network that, was password protected. So I thought I was safe. I had, I thought I took basic security measures. I didn't use the same password in multiple places. What I've learned is that creates a false sense of security because you and I, when we're sitting there, we think, oh, well, I've done these 5 things or these 7 things. And so you think you're safe. What I learned from creating this checklist is there's actually 30 things people need to check to really be safe. And what changed for me was learning what those were. How I got out of that situation, I met some of the best cybersecurity people on the planet, the ones who protect our nuclear submarine codes and Wall Street trading floor with trillions of dollars, and who help work with the CIA to bring down, large scale cyber criminals. And they had a startup they were starting. They invited me to come in with them, and I worked in the trenches side by side, learning the dark web marketplace and the business of cybercrime. And it is a business. It's a $10.5 trillion economy. If it were a country, it would be the world's 3rd largest after only the US and China. That is how big cybercrime is. So frankly, why I was targeted today, everything's automated. And so you are a target just by being a human with an account if you don't take certain precautions to protect yourself.
Speaking of countries, where do cyber criminals come from? Are they within North America or are they often abroad?
Unfortunately, they're global. There's a lot in Russia. There's a lot in China. There's four types of cyber criminals. There's nation state actors, which is really where our governments are out hacking each other. You've got cybercrime rings, which is what you see. These are the buildings and stuff where people literally are checking in to work, to then scam people. And they have HR departments and CEOs and incentive plans. I mean, they operate like a corporation, but their business is extortion. And then you've got individual hackers, which are the lone wolves who are hacking people. What's really changed in the last 20 years is they used to have to do more manual work. So you'd think, well, I'm safe. Who'd want to target me? I'm not special enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not whatever. But the thing is, if you just have an online presence and a bank account, that bank account, whether it has $100 or $100,000, is a target. And the tools that are available to hackers now automate everything. So there's very little manual time-taking intervention they have to do. They have bots who do tens of thousands of hacking attacks on your passwords, and every bank on the planet to see if they can get into an account. And that's what's changed. So people thinking, well, I can't be a target is really from 10, 20 years ago. And that's where people are getting into harm's way by thinking they're not a target. You have to assume you are and protect yourself from them getting to you and getting you, and your information that's already been leaked and on the dark web being used against you. The good news is that it's not as hard as people think. Like I said, there are just 30 checks you need to do. I call it my 3-30-30 model. There's 3 steps to take, 30 things to check, and you'll be 30 times safer if you put those things in place that aren't there today.
When you first started talking about your story, and again, you come from the world of computers, I'm sure there are listeners who are aghast at this fact because of who you were at the time that you were hacked. And in some respects, people are going to be saying, well, if this happens to her, we're very vulnerable.
Correct. And that's the good way to look at it. And it's terrifying for a minute to sit there and go, oh my gosh, I am so vulnerable. But that's why I say, but you need to feel that because frankly, you need to have the motivation to then take the few steps that are necessary for you to actually protect yourself. I kind of liken it to, here's what's happened. When we were growing up, we learn not to cross the street without looking both ways, not to take candy from strangers. We learn all these life safety rules. The internet is so new, nobody's handed those down to us. We don't know what they are. So, you don't walk down a dark alley, in a big city that you're visiting at night. That's dangerous. But people are doing the equivalent of that online every day without realizing it. And so we have this education gap. And when you learn, and here's the other thing, I did not want to learn cybersecurity. I did not want to, and nobody should have to become a cybersecurity expert in order to protect themselves. And I'm very happy to tell you, you don't have to. I mean, everything that I've done is about, these are the things you need to do to stay safe. So you don't have to become, the security IT guy or, a black belt in online protection. You just need to make sure you're not exposing, most people think of your house. I liken it to, they say your house is your home is your castle. Well, I say your digital home and your digital life is your digital castle. You wouldn't go off on a vacation and leave your garage door wide open and your front door unlocked and your windows unlocked, but that's what people have right now without realizing it. And so what you need to do is start protecting those. And I say the reason it's so hard to protect yourself, is you can't see it. You can't protect what you can't see. If I asked you how many accounts, how many online accounts do you think you have? What's your guess?
Online accounts?
Mm-hmm. Logins.
Probably about 6 or 7.
Okay. The average American, we just crossed, the average American actually has 240, and that number is expected to go up to 400 by the end of the year. And most of us think, well, wait a minute, I couldn't possibly have that many. But then when you go back to the fact that, oh, wait, I did take that 10% coupon. I did take that 10% coupon and I had to create an account for it. I bought that Groupon yoga thing and I had to download the app for it. And there's all these ways that, especially if you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing, like reusing passwords, you can get caught. There's a lot of people who will have the same password or the same email that they use for newsletters and coupons that they use for their banking and their retirement accounts. And even if you have a separate password for it, if you don't have an email that's unique just to your financial accounts and you're getting newsletters through it and you're doing email correspondence on it, it's probably been exposed on the dark web, which means they have your email and your password. If they hack your email, they can reset your banking and trading and retirement accounts. So when you start realizing, oh, this is how they get in, they're looking, we have a saying in cybersecurity, the bad guys only need to be right once. They only need one open window or one unlocked door in your life to get in. And so what you want to do is the digital equivalent of what you do in your house. You go room by room, window by window, door by door, and lock up before you leave, or just even to stay safe in your own home. We need to learn how to do that as a group of civilians, if you will, who aren't cybersecurity experts. And that's what I'm on a mission to help people understand.
Well, I was just about to ask the question. When one goes to your website, smarteronlinesafety.com, what can they find and how can you help?
Right. Well, I do have a lot of free resources and more coming out. We're just coming up on our first year, believe it or not. I've been in cybersecurity for 10 years, but I left my other companies to found this. And what we have, I have a weekly resource of a newsletter and a podcast and a show that tells you here's the current scams. I bring experts on. I bring people on who have been victims of cybercrime and survived it, and they tell what happened, and we're telling people what they need to know. I don't want to just tell people stories without saying, so here's the takeaway. Here's what you need to do. And very shortly here, I have a book coming out, and I'm going to have companion information on the website so that you can get the steps that you need to protect yourself. And if you want to read more about it, you can get the book, and that'll walk you through all the steps in more detail.
Jocelyn, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program. This is very, very important.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on, and stay safe out there, everybody.
Jocelyn King, the founder of Smarter Online Safety. There is so much to unpack on this topic that we're definitely going to have Jocelyn back on the program. In the meantime, you can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0866, and you'll find the link to Jocelyn's site where you can find information, tips, her newsletter, and her valuable podcast to keep you safe. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
This is slightly embarrassing, but I only just found out that Albert Einstein was a real person. I swear, this whole time I thought he was a theoretical physicist.
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like, but the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestufffileprogram program.
I'm leading a standing ovation for Canada. Hi, I'm Amy Skye. As a singer-songwriter and producer and a proud Canadian, I'm thrilled when artists around the world record my songs. You could say that's one way to shop Canadian. Let's all do our best to support Canadian businesses and protect Canadian jobs. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada for Canada.
You're experiencing the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. Sit back, relax, let it rattle around between your ears, tickling your cerebellum, and enjoy.
And still to come in the program, we'll talk to the author of The Laundryman, plus Marc Hartzman, the curator of Weird Historian, is on the program once again to share a weird story for the month of March. Plus, we also have Sir Dudley's Poetry Corner, Morning Shower Thoughts, and of course, an Idiot of the Day, but we have much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. The McKee, Kentucky Baptist Church called police to check out a man lying on its front steps wearing only underwear at 8 a.m. in the winter. The county sheriff, one of his deputies, and McKee Police Chief Zach Bryant arrived to find 58-year-old Michael Wayne Chancery had rammed several vehicles with his vehicle, then drove into the front of the general store building, causing significant damage. He then walked over to the church, where he allegedly threw a bench through the church's door. The local newspaper made a point of relating that Chancery is a Florida man. I guess they felt the need to state that fact because they felt that nobody in Kentucky could commit a weird crime. Law enforcement called for EMS as it was clear that Chancery was intoxicated and had admitted to taking edibles and smoking pot. Chancery also pointed out that his arms were 10,000 years old and that he had come to the church to get verified that he is God. Once at the hospital, because you know he definitely was taken to the hospital, he told staff that he had indeed been verified as God. Doctors provided medical clearance for Chancery, in other words, a checkup from the neck up, and he was booked into jail on numerous charges. Well, he's certified something. Tommy Lynch from Derbyshire, England, was rushed to the hospital after waking up with blue skin, only for medics to discover it was dye from new bed sheets. The 42-year-old said he looked like an avatar after sleeping in gifted Navy bedding. A friend convinced him to visit Queen's Hospital, where concerned emergency staff put him on oxygen. About 10 doctors surrounded Lynch before a medical swab on his arm turned blue, revealing the cause. Said Lynch, "I was mortified, but they said I'd given them a good laugh. They don't usually have funny stories in emergency." The bed sheets that cost £40 were a November gift for his new home. It took Lynch a week of baths to remove the blue dye, with bath water turning blue each time. He advises always washing new sheets before use, joking, "unless you want to jump the queue at emergency." Well, either that or you want to be a member of the Blue Man Group. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, Mother Brooke Malcher found an unexpected solution for early morning entertainment with her 15-month-old son, Grayson, at Home Depot. By the way, Home Depot opens up at 6 a.m.
What kind of person would come here at 5:45 a.m.?
Well, let me tell you. Malcher went viral with a TikTok video that shows the toddler exploring washing machines, dishwashers, and opening cabinet displays throughout the store. Said Malcher, "I had a feeling he would love it because he loves to open cabinets, press buttons, and touch everything he's not supposed to at home. When I thought about Home Depot, I knew it was the perfect place to keep him entertained." Her video caption read, Home Depot saving us when we are bored and it's too hot to go outside.
That's who's in our parking lot at 5:45 a.m. Real customers made for doing. And at the Home Depot, everything we do for them.
Comments praise the sensory play opportunity, with one user noting it as Montessori on a budget. Melcher, also the mother of a 10-week-old daughter named Scarlett, chose Home Depot for its 6 a.m. opening time. She said, "He had the best time looking at every dishwasher and opening every cabinet."
This is the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
Well, he's only 15 months old. Wait till he's 2 or 3 years old, and he figures out where they keep the nail guns. And now, this.
The Stuff File presents Sir Dudley Piddly Havisham Sedgwick Smythe's Poetry Corner.
A certain young fellow named B.B. wished to wed a woman named Phoebe. But, he said, I must see what the clerical Phoebe before Phoebe be Phoebe B.B.
And let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Award-winning author Dwayne Brenna has a new mystery novel out. This one features Northwest Mounted Police solving a murder in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan in the winter of 1883, and it's called The Laundryman. Dwayne joins us from Saskatchewan via Riverside.com. Hi, Dwayne.
Hi there.
Thanks for being on the program with us. What made you decide to go back in time and do a story from 1883?
Well, there are a number of reasons for that. One reason is that Prince Albert was just such an interesting place in 1883. It was pretty much the center of Saskatchewan at the time. The major transportation route into the province was, of course, the Saskatchewan River. And Prince Albert also had a plethora of trees to the north, farmland to the south. They had every right to think that they were going to be the next capital of the Northwest Territories. They were expecting the railroad to follow the river, and it eventually did not. As you know, it took a southern route through Regina, largely through the machinations of Governor Dewdney. And that resulted in a bit of decline for the town of Prince Albert. But it was a town of 2,000 souls in 1883. A friend of mine had been researching a paper on theatricals in Saskatchewan, music hall theatricals, and he came upon an incident and told me about it of a Mountie and a traveling actor in the 1880s. Who were having a drink in the bar, and the Mountie accidentally shot the actor in the foot. That scene never occurs in the book, but it kind of got me thinking about Prince Albert, about the Northwest Mounted Police in that time period. In 1884, my grandfather was born. This was not something that had even occurred to me when I started to write the book. But as I began to explore that time, I thought, I'm really interested in the world into which my grandfather was born. I had the pleasure of working with him on the family farm until I was about 15 years old when he passed away. So I actually knew somebody who was born in 1884. My young sons can hardly believe it.
The story about the laundryman, I mean, you have two Northwest Mounted Police solving this case, but they're kind of mismatched, correct?
Oh, yeah, very much so. And I really look for those kind of mismatchings when I'm setting out to write a book. You've got Corporal Belvedere, who's a hardened veteran of the Mounted Police. He's got a kind of a brutal past that's scarred him in many ways, and he's fairly cynical, fairly unhappy. He knows that he's in the business of colonization and has conflicting thoughts about that. And then I've paired him with a younger surgeon, a 24-year-old Mountie surgeon named Virgil Montgomery, who is there to look after people, there to keep them alive, whereas Belvedere seems to be somebody around whom a lot of death happens. So it's an adventure story, and it's full of mismatched characters like this, especially Belvedere and Montgomery.
You have a police officer and you have a surgeon. And they're kind of mismatched. It sounds like a little bit like a Sherlock Holmes Watson kind of situation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that wasn't lost on me. The fact that Watson himself is a doctor, and I wanted to kind of make that parallel. A lot of the same methods of solving crimes, deduction as opposed to DNA, are used in the book. So yeah, there's a certain leaning toward Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and the Sherlock Holmes mysteries.
The book is called The Laundryman. Do you write to a particular title, or do you come up with a title after you finish writing the book? And why is it called The Laundryman?
Well, I came up with a title sort of in the middle of writing the book, but what they're there to solve initially is the murder of a laundryman who has been shot dead in his own backyard in this town of Prince Albert. The whole business of washing one's dirty linens is a recurring theme in the novel, and in fact, Belvedere talks later about having to wash the dirty linens in this town. So the idea of a laundryman seemed to fit as a title, both for the initial scene of the novel, but also for the work that goes on later on.
Some people write historical fiction where they keep the fiction in the historical period. Some people also write historical fiction with a kind of a twist to what is happening today. Which category are you from?
Well, I'm from the category that believes when you write historical fiction, the emphasis should be on the fiction. So there's no history lessons going on in this book, but in exploring the past, one finds out why we are living in the reality that we're living in now. So I believe too that historical fiction must have something to say about the present day, and what's said here is this is why we're at this point now in Saskatchewan, and it all started in 1883 or before that.
You've written two books about poetry, and again, this is a historical mystery. And I'm just wondering, does that take different sides of the brain to concoct the stories or concoct the poems? How does that change?
Yeah, interesting with the poetry books. I started writing poetry. My wife was studying at the University of Alberta, and I became a house husband for a year, driving my kids to hockey practice and to school and so forth. And I was working on a bit of theater history in the mornings, but in the afternoons, I thought, I'm going to write a poem a day. And then I thought, well, what am I going to write about? It has to be something I'm passionate about. So I wrote a book of poems about baseball, and it was published by Hagios Press. It was almost the easiest book I've ever had published. I think I got word back within a week from the publisher after I'd sent him the manuscript that he was going to publish it. But it started with these poems, one a day. Certainly with historical fiction, you've got to be in it for the long haul. The Laundryman, for example, took me 2 years to write. And you've got to be willing to slog through it when the going gets tough. Whereas with a poem, you can finish one in a day. And so it's much more immediate satisfaction when you're writing poetry.
When you were writing The Laundryman, did you have to go through copious amounts of research to look back at the time period of 1883?
Oh, yeah. It was, I think every writer asks himself why he has the right to begin writing this novel. And I didn't begin for a long time until I had done copious amounts of research. One of the best things I found was just a master's thesis on the history of Prince Albert. It was a University of Saskatchewan master's thesis written in the 1960s, and it was called The History of Prince Albert, 1870 to 1910. And I can't begin to tell you how much detail from that thesis, it was a history thesis, how much detail from that, got into my novel eventually. But I also, of course, spent a lot of time in Prince Albert. The Northwest Mounted Police jail cells are still there, so you can visit them. But I went to Battleford as well, which is where these guys, where the two Mounties come from. And visited the fort. They have a wonderful sort of living history program there. So that was also part of the research.
You mentioned some trepidation in putting out or starting to write this book. I think you also answered the question, but I'll just ask it in a different way. What was it that kind of unlocked the key or unlocked the door to putting this book together? Was it that thesis that you mentioned?
Well, I think the thesis was very helpful. It gave me the permission, I think, to start writing. But really, when I got, and it took some time to do this, when I got those two characters together, Belvedere and Montgomery, and started to consider how they might get along or not get along, and how their relationship might change over the course of the novel, I think really that's where the key to writing began, and that's where everything took off.
Well, since it's primarily the relationship between the two police officers, are you thinking of perhaps writing a sequel?
Well, in fact, that is happening, and I've just gotten word from my publisher, Ed Willett at Shadowpaw Press, that he's very interested in seeing one. So the sequel is set in a place called Wolverine Creek, which is also a historical site in Saskatchewan. It's a place where General Middleton mustered his troops. It's the place where Chief Whitecap was kept prisoner during the resistance of 1885. Belvedere and Montgomery will ride again, and they will ride into this telegraph station in order to solve a series of mysterious disappearances.
Well, congratulations on the book. The book is called The Laundryman, and thank you very, very much, Dwayne, for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Dwayne Brenna, author of The Laundryman. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0866, and you'll find the links to Dwayne's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
Maybe plants are really farming us, giving us oxygen until we eventually expire and turn into mulch, which they can consume.
Morning Shower Thoughts from the Stuff File program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestufffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestufffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here's a brief word about our show and my book. If you become a regular Patreon patron of the Stuff File program, I'll give you an e-version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with two men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. It's easy to do. Just go to patreon.com and become a patron to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. So, join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with two men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File Program.
Coming to you from Canada, a place where fighting is frowned upon, unless it's on an ice rink. This is the Stuff File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Now, the Stuff File program presents The Weird Story of the Month with Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com.
And here we are with the Weird Historical Story of the Month, this for the month of March. And Marc, some people have a difficult time dodging a bullet.
Yeah. That's right. That was a big problem with this story for this month. So this is a story that took place on March 23rd, 1918. And there was a famous magician at the time. His name was Chung-Ling Soo, who was performing his famous bullet catch trick. And the trick went awry. Let me back up a little bit, though, and give you some background on Chung-Ling Soo, and then we'll get back to what happened that night, that fateful night, and how things went wrong. He has a very interesting story. So Chung-Ling Soo sounds like he was a Chinese magician, but he was not. He was actually a magician named William Ellsworth Robinson, who was a man who was a brilliant illusion designer. He worked for Alexander Herman and Harry Keller, who were very famous magicians around that turn of the century era. So he designed a lot of their illusions, kind of going back and forth between the two magicians. And he wanted to perform as well, but what he found was that he was not a great stage performer. He wasn't good on stage, just with banter with the audience and with the tricks, that sort of thing. So he saw a magician, I guess early 1900s or so, whose name was Ching-Ling Fu. And he realized that Ching-Ling Fu, because he was not English, he wasn't American, he didn't speak on stage. He basically had an excuse because he didn't speak the language. He could just be up there in his, I think he was Mongolian, sort of his garb and do his illusions. And he didn't have to worry about talking. And so William E. Robinson thought, I could dress up as a Chinese magician and I won't have to worry about talking. So he called himself Chung-Ling Soo, just sort of altered a few letters and dressed up as if he was from the Far East and built an amazing career on stage for himself without having to talk or say a single word. So he did various illusions on stage, and one night in London, March 23rd, 1918, Saturday evening, he has assistants call up two volunteers from the audience, a couple British soldiers, and they step up and they take the rifles and they get them loaded, they mark the bullets, and the assistants working with Chung-Ling Soo. What they would do is they would have a little cup that they would put these bullets in, these marked bullets in with a false bottom, and then they would swap them for duplicate bullets, and Chung-Ling Soo would be able to sort of palm the marked bullets and be able to create this illusion of the cut bullets, right? The guns, of course, were supposed to be rigged to not actually fire the real bullets. They would create the sound and the smoke and would feel as if the guns were really fired, but there was a mechanism inside that would prevent the bullets from actually firing. So these two British soldiers, they go ahead, they load it up, everything's inspected, everything looks good. Audience members go back to their seats, the two assistants pull up their guns, aim them at Chung-Ling Soo. He's holding a plate out. He would basically appear to catch these bullets on a plate. They would just sort of appear there. He would obviously use sleight of hand to just sort of slip the bullets there at the right time with the sound and the smoke, and the whole thing would feel as if the bullets were fired and landed there. So something went wrong with one of these rifles on this night. One of the screws, I think, maybe had fallen loose. So he had basically a literal loose screw. And the bullet fired. And so it struck Chung-Ling Soo, and he fell to the ground. And at first, the audience, was kind of shocked, but there was this thought of like, oh, this is part of the act, right? As if he's acting like he was hit, but he'll get right back up. But then he didn't. And suddenly everyone kind of realized that something had gone horribly wrong. Stage manager kind of rushed out. Chung-Ling Soo, for the first time, sort of broke character on stage because he spoke out. He said, oh my God, something's gone wrong, dropped the curtain. So he spoke English, again, breaking character, but he'd been shot. And he was rushed to hospital, but he ended up passing away the next day. And then the story came out that this was actually William Ellsworth Robinson, who had been dressing up and acting as Chung-Ling Soo the whole time. But really just a horrible tragedy that happened that night on stage. He was really a brilliant magician. Just this one time, the prop went wrong and it proved fatal.
I've got a couple of questions. Where exactly were they were pointing the rifles at him, and how was he supposed to catch them?
So this is a very good question. It's not entirely clear. So they pointed the guns at him because that's the idea. They're going to point it right at him and then he would catch them before he could strike them. I don't think he was trying to grab them out of midair with his hand or anything like that. The documents I have basically say he had a plate that he would have the bullets appear on. How exactly that was supposed to happen is a little unclear. It doesn't sound like a bullet fired would just sort of gently land on a plate. And I don't think he was holding it up as a shield and it was like lodged in the plate. I think he was sort of just letting the bullets end up on the plate after they were shot. But I think it all happened so quick that maybe this wasn't something that the people were noticing too much at that time. But yeah, it's a little unclear how exactly it worked. And of course, there's no footage of this from 1918, unfortunately. But this was a trick. And, others have tried similar types of bullet catches. David Blaine did one, I think about 10 years ago, with a steel cup in his mouth, which he did, but I think something kind of went a little bit wrong and it was a close call, and he doesn't do it anymore. So it's obviously a very dangerous stunt, because even when you're supposed to not be doing it for real, sometimes things go wrong.
Clearly. And again, even back in 1918, which, by the way, back then my father was 2 years old, even back then, I would like to see some sort of illusion where the person physically caught the bullet, not just have it appear on a plate.
Yeah, that would seem to be incredibly impressive, to just grab the bullet out of the air without damaging the hand in any way. But, apparently this was a well-known trick he'd done many times and had never had any issues with it. And then something just went wrong. There was speculation, I think, was he murdered? Was this done on purpose? Did someone actually tamper with the guns, knowing it would misfire that way? Or I guess not misfire, but actually fire. But I don't think that's ever been proven. I think that's just some speculation that maybe this was calculated. But again, I think probably it was just a horrible accident.
Did the audience get a refund?
I'm not sure. I don't think I saw anything about the refund. They got quite a show. I think this was sort of the grand finale, but certainly a show they would never forget, unfortunately, in the worst possible way.
Clearly. How often? I mean, you mentioned David Blaine, was it?
Yeah, he attempted this trick. Like I said, I think it was 10 or 11 years ago.
Just generally speaking, how prominent was the catch a bullet trick?
Oh, it's been done for quite a long time. I know Penn and Teller have done a version of it as well. Chung Ling Soo wasn't the first one to do this. In fact, I have a story about this on WeirdHistorian.com, and I mentioned another case that took place about 100 years prior to Chung Ling Soo's fatal attempt that was on in November 1820 in Germany. And in that particular case, a Polish magician named Dolinsky and his wife had been summoned to Germany to perform for the prince. And he was excited about this. He thought, we can get more exposure. We can broaden our tour of Europe, get more money for our show. So he was excited about this. And he thought, well, we should do the bullet catching trick and we can have the prince's bodyguard be the marksman. And this would be such a great show. So his wife, who worked with him, was not excited about this idea. First of all, she was pregnant. And she was concerned that, that they have to teach these soldiers what to do, how the whole thing works, right? So that nothing goes wrong, like we just discussed with Chung Ling Soo. So they worked on this, with the soldiers, and she was concerned, they speak in different languages. They don't speak perfect German, so they might not understand the German properly. So she didn't know, if this would go properly. She was very concerned that there was just way too much room for error. So sure enough, they go up to the show, and they have the prince pull the trigger, and things went wrong. The gun fired, and it was him firing at her, and she died from the wound 2 days later. So again, another tragic case of the bullet catch gone horribly wrong on stage.
Was it really, though, or does he have an alibi?
Well, I think that there was just, excitement for this trick, and then again, just something went wrong.
Did they have any other children?
They had actually lost an earlier pregnancy. They had just lost a child, and so she was pregnant with another one. And so obviously that just sort of made her all the more concerned and nervous, to make sure that nothing could go wrong here. Her husband was so excited that he was willing to put her at risk.
Okay, I'm now more curious or more suspicious of the husband. With an already lost child, we don't know what he did, and now a dead wife and child. I'm thinking there's more here than meets the eye.
There could be. Maybe there's a whole other story there. This one's over 200 years old, so I don't think there's too much documented about the case other than the few articles I found from that time. But who knows? There could be something there.
Well, over 200 years, but maybe we should exhume the body.
That we could do, probably.
I think the lesson learned here is try not to catch bullets.
I think that's a good lesson for everybody. I think it's a good plan. Don't try catching bullets. Tends to not lead to good things.
Marc, thank you once again for another weird story from weirdhistorian.com. Looking forward to your story in April.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter.
Marc Hartzman, the curator of weirdhistorian.com and also the publisher at curiouspublications.com. He's the author and curator of several books. His latest one is The Talking Dead, a collection of messages from beyond the veil, 1850s to 1920s. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0866, and you'll find the link to Marc's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his books directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. This Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
It was just about 7 weeks ago that we had a similar story here, so this one is going to sound like a broken record. Patrick Alexander faced trespassing charges in Chesterfield, South Carolina, with $250 bail. After retrieving his belongings, Alexander handed Judge John Davis 3 fake $100 bills, telling him to keep the change. Davis immediately noticed the money's unusual color and discovered Chinese writing on the back. An officer confirmed the bills were counterfeit using a currency detection pen. Instead of going free, Alexander received additional charges of felony forgery and misdemeanor contempt of court, increasing his bond by $6,000. Police later determined Alexander actually gave 4 fake bills when booking the evidence, meaning he attempted to tip the judge $150 rather than $50. Now, why, oh why, would you attempt to bribe a judge in his open courtroom with counterfeit money? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0866. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestuffile.com. And once again, Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0866. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. And you can find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including kdxradio.com and over the air on stations like
World FM New Zealand,
WNRHLP-FM Newport Richey, Florida,
KZZHLP-FM Eureka, California,
WFNU-LP St. Paul, Minnesota,
CKUW-FM Winnipeg,
CFMU Hamilton,
CKLU Sudbury,
Local 107.3 FM St. John,
CHSR Fredericton.
Plus, streaming on any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
Sir Dudley here. You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. And don't forget, if you even think of removing pillow or mattress tag warnings, we will be coming for you.